Yes? Oh, you can hear me. Shall I have a shout?
Woo!
Yes, very good. We got audience reaction. Hello, hello Buenos Aires. Hello, welcome from Cascais. Well, just outside of Cascais in Portugal. Here I am via modern technology. Cheers. It's actually in the afternoon here, so it's okay. Good. We just had the Parity 10-year birthday. Can you believe that? It was just 1 month ago. We've been doing all of this for over 10 years now. Polkadot and Sub0. Sub0 is a little bit younger. I think it's approaching about its 7th year. And it came from quite humble origins. The first Sub0, a little bit like the first DevCon, was done from the office. We just opened up the Parity Berlin office and invited, I think, about 100 practitioners in the then Polkadot, the nascent Polkadot developer ecosystem. And we talked mostly about substrate, of course, hence the name Sub0. I wanted to talk a little bit about the origins, because I think it's important to understand where we've come from to understand where we're going. Sometimes you can get sort of caught up in the moment and you forget about the trajectory that you're on. And if you look about where you were in the past and what you were thinking of back then, you can sort of plot out a course into the future. We got started with Sub0 after at Parity we started doing Polkadot. Polkadot dates back to about autumn 2016. It dates back to a conversation that I had with an early Parity employee, Marek. Some of you might even know him. About what a sort of Ethereum 2 might look like if Parity were designing it. And not to want to step on Ethereum's shoes too much, we sort of tried to in my sort of design of this, I tried not to put the EVM right into a central spot. I figured let's try and make it more general than that. And this idea of having a WebAssembly based heterogeneous multi-sharded or multi-chain system was sort of born in that conversation. A little bit later, I wrote the Polkadot vision paper and published it late 2016. And that really was the sort of the genesis of Polkadot, I suppose. Why bother is, I think, a question that not enough people ask, at least not in those terms. And the answer is very simple. We needed better core technology. Parity was one of the, I would say at least at one point, most important of the Ethereum client implementations. We knew the technology inside out. Indeed, many of the Parity employees were instrumental in inventing it. But we also knew that it wasn't fit for the world at large. It was a good sort of tech demo, if you like. And we needed core technology that could reasonably host large, really large numbers of people, like societies of people. And that technology was baked in to the Polkadot proposition. In essence, it was crucial, and we believed it was crucial, and I still believe this was the right decision, to make the core technology before you make the products on the technology. Because otherwise the products can only be a little demo. Well, we delivered that Polkadot core technology, at least the first iteration of it. Jam is the second iteration of it, and it takes many of the same base level bits of technical design, repackages it into something that is probably going to be more useful for writing products, and will be presented to the world at large in due course once it's ready. I expect it'll be ready in the next year or so. But the point is that Polkadot proved that its underlying technology, through some of its parachains and their transaction volume, proved that this core technology is ready to host really large numbers of users. The actual blockchain isn't enough. It needs a bit of other stuff as well. Storage, message passing, peer-to-peer stuff. And this has been developed actually also by Parity in large part over the last few years. Probably not so many of you know about this. It wasn't really very widely talked about, advertised, published. But it's there. It's actually utilized for one of the initiatives that I'm going to talk about a bit later. The point is, for the first time, these underlying core technologies are at a stage where I believe we're ready to develop serious products that can gain serious traction. Now, it's important to understand first why we would think that Polkadot is needed for these products. And for this, we need to understand a little bit about where society is at. There is a context, and it's not one that is necessarily known by very many people. We live, in some sense, in the information age, although the services available to us are not commensurate with that. The underlying ability of us to command technology is at a stage where these products and services are possible, but they, to a large extent, have not been delivered. And even to the extent they have been delivered, they're not in a great amount of usage. Different people call this different things. If you read a book by a man called, whose name is Rees-Mogg, and another man called Davidson, called The Sovereign Individual, you might have read it. It's a reasonably popular book in crypto circles. They call this the information age, and they call the people who live in the information age, properly anyway, sovereign individuals. I had already come up with a term, Web3, and then later, much later, a term, the agentic society or intentional agency, to mean largely the same thing. The terms don't really matter. The underlying meaning does. It's about people who are ready and willing to take the responsibility over their future into their hands. Now, it can be difficult to understand what is meant by this, especially if you live in one of the sort of nominally free societies of the world. We live in a social construct that largely hides the bits that are not free by design. If these things become well known to individuals who believe that they are free, then those individuals might take action against the social construct, and that would be problematic for the social construct. Nonetheless, it is my distinct belief that most of us do not live in freedom, nominally free or otherwise. And if you read some of the books available, which we might reasonably call socio-political philosophy, you might be able to sort of get a feeling for that yourself. The problem statement, if you like, is that the industrial era, that would be the one right before the information age, the industrial age, these had very particular social dynamics, inherited in large part from the gunpowder revolution. What we see when we look in the digital world is essentially that industrial age society transposed onto the internet. You can think of it as being authorities, middlemen, intermediaries, arbiters, opaqueness, closed designs. It's interesting to note when you read some books from earlier, like a lot earlier, maybe 97, like the Sovereign Individual was published, or even in the 50s when some other socio-political philosophy that discussed similar concepts was published. People expected it to be different. When people saw the internet, they figured this would be it. And in reality, it sort of got a little bit, what do they say, kind of railroaded in the wrong direction. But I do believe the technology is slowly coming of age in fits and bursts. Polkadot is one of those fits and bursts. How do we know it's come of age? Well, firstly, it needs to connect us to our family, to our friends, to our community, whether it's meet space or more remote, and to the world of business and commerce, to the broader world of information passing, opinion. And in some sense, it's a world that we have to live in, that we own a bit of, that we believe a bit of it properly represents us and it is inextricably linked to us. No middlemen, no third parties. It's just about us, our identity, if you like, projected in there. In the same way that meat space identity is largely dictated by our language, dialect, accent, the clothes that we wear, the way that we carry ourselves or style our hair, so it needs to be the case in the digital realm, and that cannot be facilitated by a third party. Well, if it is facilitated, it certainly shouldn't be able to be dictated by a third party. No more so that the government should be able to dictate how we wear our hair or decide the clothes. We need to onboard into this world, this sovereign digital realm, millions and then billions. I'm told that the approximate amount of people that command a self-custodying wallet is about a few 100,000 globally. Well, that's not millions, and it's certainly not billions. We're still in the early days. There's reasons for this. The technology cannot support millions or billions, at least not the stuff that is currently popular. And the products don't really do anything useful for most of those billions of people. They don't make those millions of billions of people's lives easier, cheaper, simpler, or more delightful. Not enough to make a difference anyway. So, how is this related to Polkadot? Well, Polkadot is now at a point, or very, very, very soon will be, where it can support those millions, maybe even tens of millions of people. And so Parity as a company needs to move from protocol design increasingly to platform design, and then increasingly to product. We have already switched much of our focus into platform design. We can call it platform and infrastructure if you like. It's things like name services, systems for recognizing unique individuals, user agents, which is to say browsers, mobile app, that sort of thing. In due course, Parity will become more product focused than it is now. At present, it's taking some first tentative steps into product prototyping. At the end of the day, product is, in some sense, the technology combined with real people, humans. Or if you like, making people's lives easier through technology. Crypto's not really doing that yet. So how do we do this? And how do we retain the ideals that were sort of, I guess, inherited in some sense from the early cyberpunks, but that have been written about by many of the sort of leaders of technology, thought leaders since. And I'm not talking about Mark Zuckerberg. I'm talking about Satoshi and so on. Well, it's an interesting problem, and it's one that we've been working on for some time. And it's not a trivial one. Developing this platform is a lot of work. In some sense, it's been developed. I remember when I first started really thinking in these terms, and it was summer 2022. I was in New York. And I was trying to imagine, summer 22, for what it's worth, was about the time that Polkadot really started sort of getting off the ground, that it was reasonable for parachains to launch. And parachains had a sort of tech platform that they could really, really count on. And I was really starting to think about how would we get really a lot of people onto this. Well, 2022 was this time that I sort of came up with this idea of real big funnel. And I don't mean bringing in people that were kind of familiar a little bit with Ethereum or Bitcoin and then transitioning them to Polkadot. I mean bringing in the world. And one of the ways that you have to bring in the world is you have to provide the right user agent. You have to provide the right portal. You have to provide them something they can download. Up until quite recently, Parity's general strategy for this was head in the sand. Let others manage it. We do core technology. That has changed. It has been changing for some time. But it has taken some time, and I mean years, to work out the precise ingredients, the precise recipe for making a portal or a portal system of portals that is really got a good chance of getting that level of adoption that I believe we really need. I'm happy to say that we are swiftly making progress. It is a focus, and I expect in the not too distant future, you'll see something that you can download or look up online. In the not too distant future, in fact the very near future, I believe you'll get a little demo, something that you can mess around with on your phones. Don't expect too much yet. It's in heavy development still, but it's at a point, I think, where you can begin to see what it is that we're trying to achieve here. You won't see everything that we're trying to achieve because I don't want to give it away quite yet. We've got some very interesting ideas, and well, I want them to be Polkadot's ideas and Polkadot's tech and Polkadot's product before it's anyone else's. The app and the other bits of the Polkadot portal platform are designed for the needs of IA. What's IA? This is a term that I quite like. Why? Well, firstly, it's AI backwards. I don't think AI is going to be 100% great for humanity. I think it's got bits that can serve it. I think it's got a lot that's going to turn it into even more of a horrible centralized patchwork than it already is. But let's hope that the good bits can, with the help of us, outpower the bad bits. Second, it stands for some interesting things. Firstly, it could stand for the information age. Second, it can stand for the intentional agent. That would be you, I hope. An agent of society that is using their brains, thinking about what it is that they want to achieve and being responsible but also authoritative about achieving it. It could also be intended agency, the thing that you're doing when you're being an intentional agent. Or it could be intelligent agency, again, using your head to work out what it is you should do in order to get society, as far as you're concerned, where you think it should be at. The Polkadot platform, or the Polkadot portal collection, in particular the Polkadot mobile app, are being designed for the needs of this intentional agent of society, the information age, the agentic society. And that's really how I'm thinking about its development. I'm not thinking about how to replace Web 2 in particularly. Now, what I am thinking about is the everyday. What is it that is needed for the everyday intentional agent? And you, as you being an intentional agent, will probably want to interact with various members of the world. Your friends, your family, your community, meet space or digital, and probably people that you have never met before, don't know about, maybe will never really meet in the future, but would like to deal with in some way. And this is what is the first principle for the design of this platform, this in turn product set. Parity will build first the platform and its associated infrastructure, and in time products on it. But it will always be open to be. We want the platform to be successful, and we know that a successful platform is one that attracts third parties to develop and deploy their stuff on it. Why? Because we know, as imaginative as we are, we cannot out-imagine the rest of the world. So, to use our platform when the time comes. Now, one of the important things about the platform for it to be useful is a piece of infrastructure that recognizes people and helps products recognize people too. And I don't mean this in a sort of they know your name and where you live and your date of birth and what it is that you like to shop kind of surveillance way. I mean it more in they can recognize a person from a bot. The same sort of recognition that we would get from a sort of supermarket cashier. Yeah. And there is a project that Parity has been doing, a sort of broader initiative, if you like, the Polkadot People initiative. Bringing people into Polkadot and letting the Polkadot platform be able to, in some privacy-centric way, recognize people. The specific project is the project Individuality. You might recognize the kind of name. I used to name things itty quite a lot in the old days. Solidity, for example. In this case, it's about recognizing individuals, not identifying them per se, but being able to know when the same one has come again under the same context. It's also known, if you like, as proof of personhood. Typically, it's done in a lazy, privacy compromising. With Project Individuality, it is not, at least not as much as it can be. To some extent, there is some thing you have to uncover about yourself for the rest of the world, which is to say Polkadot and the logic that it hosts, to be able to know that you are a unique human. But it doesn't have to be very much. Oops. Sorry, pushed the wrong button. It doesn't have to be very much. We don't need ID documents, nor should we. If you see systems that do, they're bad. Disregard them. We don't need your phone number. Even if we did, it wouldn't help us very much. Phone numbers are not especially secure. We don't need to surveil you, your retinas, for example. Any project that does is up to no good. We don't need your Web2 logins either. Again, that puts us in the hands of the tech oligarchs, which in turn is really in the hands of the nation states. And we don't necessarily trust them, do we? There is no need for a central authority with any of Project Individuality's mechanisms for recognizing unique individuals. We rely only on game theory, cryptography, and a degree of physical attributes of humans and of space-time, as it happens. Once you're inside of the system, I believe, and I certainly hope, we can afford to reward you. Not for doing nothing necessarily. Maybe there's a little bit of that. But there will be a lot of acting in a useful way concordant with Polkadot's wider needs. Oracleizing information, for example, or providing rationalization for decentralized systems. What do I mean by that? Well, there are lots of ways that autonomous systems can work well. Web3 systems, if you like. One of the basic things that we rely on is mathematics, or specifically cryptography. When we use digital signatures, we're relying on this. Another thing that we can rely on is game theory, economics. One way that we can use economics is through modeling things like cost benefit and assuming things like people don't have infinite resources. And to the extent they have finite resources, they probably don't want to throw them away on an attack that will cost them everything and deliver very little. This is basically the theoretical basis for how proof of stake consensus is secure. The problem is that when you use these economic arguments, you tend to have to pay people quite a lot of money. 15% per annum was the amount that Polkadot paid for its proof of stake over the course of 2024. It was a lot of money. Another way of securing a system using game theory and without using that sort of cost-benefit, cost of attack argument is to bring on this rationalization of the cost, or at least unlikeliness, of a large amount of individual people forming some coordinated attack. It's a difficult thing to do. It comes with its own cost. And if you can be sure that each of your sort of decision makers are not inherently aligned with each other, which is to say the accounts that are validating don't have some ultimate beneficial owner or economic alignment, then you can be reasonably certain that they're probably not going to, en masse at least, collude to bring down the system. And this is where proof of personhood or individuality can be very, very helpful indeed. In due course, I'll be discussing how Polkadot can benefit from this in detailed terms, but this isn't quite the right time. Now, this will, in the not too distant future, and I mean a few months, be seamlessly, I hope, integrated into the Polkadot experience, Polkadot portal, the Polkadot sort of platform that users will use. And it will form a very important part of our long-term strategy to expand the number of people that use Polkadot and the products that sit on it. Individuality isn't enough. It's not really a product in and of itself. It merely helps us get to the point where we can, through autonomous logic, or via autonomous logic, understand when we're dealing with a unique person. How does this help? Well, it lets us give away free stuff or pay for probably non-aligned behavior, whether it's selecting validators, providing information about the real world, or something else. It allows us to have an induction campaign. And let's be clear here, the Web 2 guys know this. They know it well. They do basically the same thing, only they don't do it in strong economic terms. They use things like SMS and email to try to identify unique individuals. The ones that have some form of economic vulnerability, like say a gambling site, might use credit cards, but even those are not ideal. We don't use any of this. We go back to first principles, and we have strong methods. Some say some of these methods are a bit too strong for them. Fair enough. Hopefully there are some methods that are okay enough for most people. It's important that they're strong, important that they can't be worked around too easily, because we do intend to do economically very strong games in these systems, and we want to open it up for others to do the same. So there is a change. I mean, I call it this sort of second age. It's sort of easy to see in parity, the second age of parity. The first 10 years was about core tech. The second 10 years is about infra and products.
In the sort of top level term, we go from network to movement protocol, bringing it to society, focusing less on the technology and more on how the technology can enable us to live in the right age, in the right way. Human culture, essentially. Products will emerge over the course of 2026, I expect. The platform should emerge in the first half. Products probably a bit later. Some sooner than others. I do hope you enjoy them, and I do hope they inspire you to create products of your own on this platform we're building. Thanks for your attention. Do enjoy Sub0.